President Trump. Two words that continue to sound wrong together, sort of like horse pope or Dr. Oz. And this was a week of diplomacy for the president, or, as it turned out, the opposite of that.
President Trump hosting Chancellor Angela Merkel at the White House today. Will be their first face-to-face meeting since Mr. Trump ridiculed the chancellor on the campaign trail, accusing her of, quote, ruining Germany.
Wow. Well, first, that is a major insult, because historically the title of Chancellor synonymous with ruining Germany is pretty much taken. And second, it's got to be awkward to meet someone that you've talked so much shit about. Personally, that is why I never leave the house, because I know Johnny Depp is somewhere out there, presumably vaping into a supermodel's vagina while he mansplains acting. And if you are thinking that Trump made an extra effort to smooth things over, you would be wrong, because watch what happened when the media at a photo op made a very routine request.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, shake her hands, you weird man! It is not often that you can genuinely say, Trump really should have touched that woman. Because, look at him. He's just staring straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact. He's treating the Chancellor of Germany like a drunk guy masturbating in a subway car. And it did not get any less tense at their joint press conference, because, as you probably know, Trump has been standing by his nonsensical claim that President Obama had him wiretapped. And when a German reporter asked him about that, he tried to pull Merkel into it with him.
As far as wiretapping, I guess, by, this past administration, at least we have something in common, perhaps.
Now, what that very funny joke is referring to is the allegation that the US had monitored Merkel's phone, and she is not amused by that. In fact, that may be the most uncomfortable a US president has ever made her, and I will remind you, George W. Bush once gave her an unsolicited surprise back rub. And it wasn't just Germany dragged into Trump's wiretapping mess, because his press secretary and special guest on the Gilmore Girls reboot, Melissa McCarthy, suddenly brought a British spy agency into it too.
Sean Spicer, the president's press secretary, has backed claims that GCHQ was involved in tapping phones for Barack Obama.
He didn't use the NSA, he didn't use the CIA, he didn't use the FBI, and he didn't use the Department of Justice. He used GCHQ.
Wow. Now, that is going to piss off the British, and you do not want to piss off the British, because if you do, we will say, oh dear, shake our heads, swallow the anger, and carry it around until we die. Because think about what he's actually alleging there. He is suggesting a US president enlisted a foreign intelligence service to spy on a political adversary. That is an explosive charge. Perhaps that is why the NSA's deputy director told the BBC it was arrant nonsense, revealing a complete lack of understanding in how the relationship works. And for their part, GCHQ called the accusations utterly ridiculous. And yet, rather than distancing himself from Spicer, Trump decided to back him up.
All we did was quote a certain very talented legal mind who was the one responsible for saying that on television. That was a statement made by a very talented lawyer on Fox. And so you shouldn't be talking to me, you should be talking to Fox.
No, we should be talking to you about it, because you're the fucking president and you're repeating it. He only said it because he heard it on television is barely an acceptable excuse for why your parrot said a racial slur. No, we've been watching The Wire. We've been watching The Wire. Oh, and so you know, that very talented legal mind that Trump's talking about is this guy, Fox News contributor Judge Andrew Napolitano, a man whose persona is so overwhelmingly non-authoritative, I just assumed he was a judge in the Judge Reinhold sense of the word. Spicer was quoting Napolitano directly, and even by Fox's standards, the judge is an unreliable source. He has a history of entertaining dicey conspiracies. He once questioned whether bin Laden was actually killed, and a few years ago, he went on Alex Jones's show and said this regarding the World Trade Center. With President Trump, two words that will always sound unnatural together, like fuckable clown or wolf blitzer. And the reason we have to start with him is Trump dominates the news cycle the way a fart dominates the interior of a Volkswagen Beetle. There is simply no escape from him. Now, just a case in point, last night Trump held a pointless rally in Florida which got roadblock coverage across cable news. And while his speech was mostly boilerplate Trump, the media is fake, Chicago is a nightmare, I'm the greatest, there was one thing he said while warning about the danger of refugees that caught people's attention.
You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
Oh, no, what happened there? Did someone blow up Sweden's most famous landmark? And if they did, what was it? There was just one little problem with what the president said, and I think this news clip sums it up.
We start this hour with an urgent plea from Sweden to the U.S. government asking, what is your president talking about?
Yeah, it turns out there was no terror attack. And look, just a quick message to all other countries on Earth. In the future, you're going to find yourself wanting to ask, what is your president talking about, a great deal. And the answer is almost always going to be, we have no fucking idea. Now, Trump has since admitted his comment was in reference to a story that was broadcast on Fox News the night before concerning immigrants and Sweden. So, sifting through Trump's brain to see why he said something is now like examining a shark's stomach to see what it ate. Oh, OK, there's a sea urchin, a decomposed dolphin skull. Oh, a Fox News segment on Sweden, that's what did it. It stuck in his throat. So here is where we're at right now. Trump can dominate the news merely by referencing something that didn't happen in Sweden. And that is a real shame, because this week has seen a great deal of fascinating stories go undercovered, like this one.
The estranged half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un poisoned as he waited for a flight.
That story is both incredible and not entirely surprising, because if you're associated with Kim Jong-un, your odds of being murdered are around the same as if you live in a town that Jessica Fletcher visits on Murder, She Wrote. Death follows that woman wherever she goes. And I'll tell you why, because, and this is true, she's a serial killer. Hashtag Jessica Fletcher is a serial killer. But it wasn't so much who was killed that was surprising with this story, it was how.
One of the two women accused of carrying out the hit now says she thought she was just taking part in a TV prank show. Police say the suspect claims she was paid to convince men to close their eyes and she would spray them with water along with another woman as part of a gag. But with the last target, Kim Jong-nam, police believe the water was secretly replaced with deadly poison.
Holy shit! That is a really harsh prank show. You're dead and you're a murderer. I got you. Well, actually, she got you and we got her, but still, you're double pranked. There is nothing that is not fascinating about that story, but it didn't get the attention it deserved. And the same is true of this incredible story that you probably missed from Florida.
A Florida man behind bars this morning accused of plotting to blow up Target stores up and down the East Coast. According to the arresting documents, the 48-year-old offered someone $10,000 to put 10 bombs on the shelves inside Target stores, warning not to let the boxes bounce around or they would explode. His motive? Authorities say Barnett hoped the bombings would send Target stock prices plummeting so he could buy shares on the cheap.
Magnificent. That story contains homemade explosives, a big box store, an idiotic get-rich-quick scheme and felony charges. If it somehow also involved a snake on meth, you'd have full-on Florida bingo right there. And the stories don't stop there. You also missed the fact that British Prime Minister Theresa May went to see some children's Lego robot creations, and this is the face that she made. And if you're thinking, well, hold on, that's unfair, the camera just caught a split second there, she also made this face, and then this face. What is that ghastly monstrosity, street rat? Did you create it using your imagination? I thought we got rid of those after we Brexited. Scurry along, rat, scurry along. President Trump. Two words that continue to sound revolting together, like viscous discharge or moist stockings. The president made news on Tuesday with a startling decision.
Breaking news. President Trump has just fired the embattled FBI Director James Comey.
Surprise, everyone! Do you remember normal weeks? Because I don't remember what they felt like. Everything about Comey's firing was unusual, from the fact that he himself found out about it from TV to the termination letter, which was genuinely weird, and not just because it featured Trump's signature, which looks like a heart rate monitor of a hamster on meth. It really does. It looks more like that than it looks like his name. But it was weird because of this.
Trump firing Comey in a bizarre letter stating, "While I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau."
OK, it is just inherently suspicious to try and put words in Comey's mouth as you kick him out the door. That is the equivalent of a breakup text reading, "While I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I was the most enthusiastic, dexterous and intuitive lover you ever had, I nevertheless must terminate your position as my girlfriend." Eggplant emoji. And it kept going, because the White House spent the week emitting a series of confusing and contradictory explanations, claiming that Trump was following the recommendation of his Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who had barely been in office 2 weeks, and that he was acting on behalf of a demoralised FBI, neither of which seemed entirely plausible. And Trump blew up the whole narrative anyway on Thursday when he sat down with Lester Holt and undid 2 days of damage control in just a few sentences.
Monday, you met with the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
Did you ask for a recommendation?
What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not...
You had made the decision before they came in.
I was going to fire Comey.
Now, think about what just happened there. Trump is so desperate to appear dominant, he will rush to take the credit for anything, no matter how bad it is. If you wanted him to confess to murder, all a lawyer would have to say is, "Your Honour, the killer could not possibly have been Donald Trump. It must have been someone much stronger and smarter, with a much hotter daughter." And before they finished that sentence, Trump would be yelling, "I did it, it was me, lock me up, lock me up, lock me up." But Trump didn't just clarify who advised him to fire Comey, and quick recap, it was a mirror. He also indicated one reason why he did it.
And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
What are you doing? I was thinking of the Russia investigation when I fired Comey is the one thing that you are not supposed to say out loud. It is the kind of response that makes you ask 3 questions. 1, can he really be this stupid? 2, does he really think we as a country are this stupid? And 3, are we as a country this stupid? And it's entirely possible the answers to all 3 questions are yes. And it got even worse, as Lester Holt asked Trump about his claim that Comey had exonerated him 3 times.
He said it once at dinner, and then he said it twice during phone calls.
Did you call him?
In one case I called him, in one case he called me.
And did you ask, am I under investigation?
I actually asked him, yes. I said, if it's possible, would you let me know, am I under investigation? He said, you are not under investigation.
I call bullshit. I call turbo bullshit on that. There is no way those conversations went down in that manner. Trump has somehow managed to be both a terrible and an amazing liar, and I don't know how that's physically possible. And sure enough, Comey's far more plausible version of the dinner Trump mentioned soon made its way to the press.
Comey told associates that at dinner, the president asked if he would pledge his loyalty. Comey declined, instead telling the president he would always be honest. The president asked 2 more times, and Comey refused again. The 3rd time, Mr. Trump asked for honest loyalty. To that, Comey responded, yes, you will have that.
And it was a whirlwind. From a mass shooting and wildfires in California to Jim Acosta being banned from the White House to Trump skipping a commemoration for World War I soldiers in France because it was raining. But do you know what? That might actually have been for the best, because you just know that if he'd gone, someone would have had to tell him he can't sit on people's gravestones just because he's tired. And of course, in the middle of all this, there was the midterms on Tuesday, in which Democrats won control of the House. Objectively, a bad result for Trump, although not according to him.
You're a man who likes to win, but last night was not an absolute victory for you.
I'll be honest. I thought it was a very close to complete victory.
victory, you lost the House. Trump has an incredible ability to frame defeat as triumph. Yes, you've taken my king, but I still have all my horses, and this is horse chess. So, my horse king takes your little guy that looks like a booby, horsemate. Now, what was even weirder in that press conference was Trump's glee at the losses of Republicans who didn't embrace him during their campaigns. Because bear in mind when you're watching this, these losses were bad for him.
You had some that decided to, let's stay away, let's stay away. They did very poorly. Mike Kaufman. Too bad, Mike. Mia Love. Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia.
I honestly don't know what's worse there, his petty delight over the losses of his own party, or his petty delight in his own dumb wordplay. I bet he was in bed that night saying, Melania, did you hear that joke about Mia Love, where I said, she gave me no love? To which Melania would reply, I can't hear you, we literally sleep in different bedrooms. But my absolute favourite response to a loss took place in Nevada, where Danny Tarkanian lost his bid for a congressional seat. It was his 6th run for office and his 6th loss, and his wife had some choice words for voters.
There is no room for the voters to complain when you're going to put a liar into office. It is your fault. My husband has a bright future. Our family has a bright future. I don't know what God has in store for us, but there is no way in hell that we went through all of this for nothing.
Wow, she is pissed. Although, you know, if you are going to bring God's plan into this, it does seem like God has been up in heaven saying, you know what would be really funny? If I make Danny Tarkanian lose 6 elections in a row just to see if his wife fucking snaps. And you know what? There was also some genuinely good news that you might not have noticed concerning the midterms. 3 states voted to expand Medicaid, Florida restored voting rights to people with felony convictions, and Utah even voted to legalise medical marijuana, which means that in the not-so-distant future, there is a genuine chance that Mitt Romney could be lying on a bed, stoned out of his mind, giggling and asking his wife, do you think we have, like, too many sons? Which is good news, but it quickly got swamped by the latest development in the story that we've been calling Stupid Watergate. Because on Wednesday, Trump did the thing that we've all kind of been bracing for.
Jeff Sessions, until last night, Donald Trump's Attorney General, and punchbag. After months of public abuse, the president finally moved from ridiculing his senior law officer to firing him.
It's true, Trump finally fired Jeff Sessions, and everyone in America has been waiting for this particular shoe to drop, except Jeff Sessions, who is always waiting for any shoe to drop for fear that he will be crushed underneath it. Trump immediately appointed as acting AG Sessions' former chief of staff and oldest person in his karate class, Matt Whitaker. And everything about that appointment is weird, starting with the fact that Sessions' natural successor would be Rod Rosenstein, but Trump is famously not a fan of him as he's been protecting the Mueller investigation. So instead, Trump shoved White Shrek here into the job. And that is troubling for any number of reasons, from the fact that he's been a regular critic of the Mueller investigation to his questionable judicial philosophy, both criticising Marbury versus Madison, a bedrock Supreme Court decision, and suggesting that the key criterion for judges is, do they have a biblical view of justice? But maybe the most eye-catching thing in Whitaker's background is this.
The FBI is investigating a now shut-down Florida company that Whitaker was an advisor for beginning in 2014. World Patent Marketing billed itself as helping inventors secure patents, but the Federal Trade Commission won a judgment against the company for bilking thousands of customers out of millions of dollars.
Busy one for the president, who oversaw the largest single-state ICE raid in U.S. history, retweeted conspiracy theories about the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and visited the sites of last week's mass shootings, which went exactly as well as you'd expect.
Some of President Trump's own aides are conceding his visits to 2 cities in mourning didn't go as planned after new video shows him bragging about crowd sizes while at a hospital in El Paso.
I was here 3 months ago. We made a speech, and we had what was the name of the arena? That place was packed, right? And there was some crowd.
Thank you.
And we had twice the number outside. And then you had this crazy Beto. Beto had like 400 people in a parking lot. They said his crowd was wonderful.
Wow. Look, We all know how much Trump struggles to do the bare minimum of being a president, but it's still genuinely shocking just how much he struggles to do the bare minimum of being a fucking person. Because just consider the thought process that happened there. He visited a hospital filled with victims of a mass shooting and thought to himself, remember that other time when I was the centre of attention and it was better? And then he thought, do you think anyone else remembers that? Then he thought, I should remind them, right? Then he thought, great idea. Then he thought, thank you. Then he thought, Ivanka. Then he thought, no time. And then he said it. And he was happy with how it sounded. But Trump's pathological lack of empathy should not distract us from the important question right now, which is what action, if any, will be taken on guns? Because while you're kind of conditioned at this point to think absolutely none, pressure is building. When Ohio Governor Mike DeWine spoke at a vigil following the Dayton shooting, the crowd made it painfully clear that they wanted action.
What we do tonight by this amazing crowd is to say to them that we love you, we care very, very deeply about you.
You know you're doing a bad job when people are yelling, do something at you. Not even try a different position or like that but to the left. Just do something. The universal complaint for men putting in less than 0% everywhere. So it is pretty clear that support for meaningful gun reform is there. But as always, a key obstacle is the NRA, an organisation whose former president once famously said, you can have his gun when you pry it from his cold, dead hands. And, you know, guess what? I fucking did. So what are you going to do about it, Charlton? Shoot me? With what, you dead idiot? The NRA has successfully fought legislation for decades now, although it's currently in the midst of an internal shit show. It all started last year when federal investigators started looking into whether a Russian agent had used the NRA to infiltrate Republican politics, which is already comfortably bad enough. But then the New York State AG started looking into their tax-exempt status because the NRA is technically a non-profit. And it turns out there's been some very suspicious expenditures.
In May, leaked documents showed the group's longtime leader, Wayne LaPierre, may have misused member dues, spending nearly $300,000 on designer clothes.
$300,000 on clothes? This guy? How? Wayne LaPierre appears to only own a single suit. Here is what he wore to CPAC in 2018. Here's what he wore to CPAC in 2017. Although in 2016, to be fair, he did shake it up and wore this. I'm kidding. I'm clearly just kidding. It was obviously this. And look, if you are going to blow that much money on clothes, at least make more interesting choices than dressing like the head coach of the opposing team in a Mighty Ducks movie. And it wasn't just suits. There were also allegations of misspending on lavish travel expenses, all of which was infuriating for many NRA members and employees, since the organisation has been running deficits of as much as $40 million and has even eliminated free coffee at its headquarters and frozen the employees' pension plan. And things got even worse this week when this story broke.
The CEO of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre, wanted the gun lobby to buy him a $6 million house in Texas, in part over fears for his safety after the Parkland school shooting last year.
With stupid Watergate 2, the least wanted sequel ever, closely followed by every Pirates of the Caribbean one. It was yet another week of damning revelations for the president, with the biggest perhaps coming on Tuesday.
Tonight, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, is directly linking President Trump to the heart of the impeachment inquiry. Democrats in the room say there were audible gasps and sighs as Taylor, a career diplomat, detailed the White House's pressure campaign.
It's not even noon, right? And this is my most disturbing day in Congress so far.
Wow. That is a big statement. Up until now, the most disturbing day in Congress was the day Orrin Hatch got bangs. And look, I respect you for trying something new, Orrin, but absolutely not. The information emerging in the Ukraine probe does not look good for the White House, which is perhaps why Trump supporters spent the week attacking the impeachment process itself. Some House Republicans even staged an invasion of a closed-door hearing, claiming they'd been shut out, a claim slightly undercut by the fact that 47 Republicans, about a quarter of those in the House, were already able to attend. And as if things could not get any dumber, there was this amazing story that broke on Friday afternoon.
One of the president's top defenders, personal attorney Rudy Giuliani, tonight raising eyebrows after what's best described as butt dialing an NBC News reporter.
It's true. Rudy Giuliani butt-dialed an NBC News reporter and could be heard saying completely non-suspicious sounding things like, "The problem is we need some money." And the wild thing is, this isn't even a one-off. Apparently Giuliani butt-dials reporters all the time. So much so, one reporter tweeted, "Everyone has a good Rudy butt-dial story." Which honestly begs the question, how is he doing this so much? It's genuinely difficult to butt-dial someone with a smartphone. Your butt has to unlock the phone, scroll through your contacts to find the reporter, and then dial. So how often does Rudy sit on his phone, and how wriggly is he when he sits? Look, I don't know how this story is going to get any stupider, but I am sure that it will, just as sure as I am that Rudy is butt-dialing another reporter right fucking now. But instead of getting dragged down that wormhole, let's instead move on to the other ongoing fiasco of this week, Brexit. The term coined to describe Britain's exit from the EU that combines the words bad idea, really bad idea, extremely bad idea, and toodaloo. And it is the toodaloo part that lets you know that Britain's involved, otherwise the word's just complete nonsense. Now, the UK's deadline to leave the EU is this Thursday, making it a so-called Halloween Brexit, meaning it is the worst thing to be added to Halloween since, lest we forget, Playboy magazine's 2014 sexy John Oliver costume. That was real. What were you thinking, Playboy? The original John Oliver is already the sexy one. You're putting a hat on a hat, guys. That's a two-hat situation right there. Boris Johnson, UK Prime Minister and dumb person's idea of a smart person, has for months now been promising to meet the deadline, insisting that he will not ask for an extension.
Can you make a promise today to the British public that you will not go back to Brussels and ask for another delay to Brexit?
Yes.
And, sorry. And would you rather...
I'd rather be dead in a ditch.
Dead in a ditch? Now, that might sound dramatic, but honestly, it's an easy enough transition for someone whose hair, wardrobe and general aesthetic might be best described as big ditch energy. But Boris's hopes have come crashing down since then, as he returned from Brussels last week with a new Brexit plan and had to put it before the House of Commons for a vote. As it was happening, hundreds of thousands of protesters were marching against Brexit, including one guy with a sign, and this is true, that read, "I am so tired." I have to say, I don't know that I've ever identified with a protest sign at a rally any more than that one. But unfortunately for Boris, as that march was going on, Parliament passed an amendment that, for complicated reasons that you do not need to know, forced a Brexit delay, much to the delight of the protesters.
And then the moment when it was clear there would be no Brexit deal today.
It means the agony continues, though, doesn't it?
I know, yes, that's boring, but that's the position that he's put us in, so...
OK, truly, I can think of nothing more quintessentially British than viewing agony as A, boring, and B, a victory. Never change, you sad, grey, repressed bastards. But what this meant was that Boris was now required to request a 3-month Brexit delay. You know, the thing that he would rather be dead in a ditch than do. And while he briefly flirted with ignoring that law, he did eventually obey it, albeit with a twist.